At 1600, Pennsylvania Avenue stands a building that almost everyone on Earth recognizes, the White House. Its tall columns, neat lawns, and strong, simple shape look calm and steady. For more than 2 centuries, big moments in American history have happened inside its rooms and across its grounds. But long before the walls were painted white, and long before presidents lived there, this place was just a muddy construction site in an area with heat, mosquitoes, and uneven land. The White House did not spring up overnight. It rose slowly from soggy ground near the Potomac River. People built it over many years, and they were not all the same. Some were free workers who earned wages for their skills. Others were enslaved people who were forced to work without pay. That is part of the true story. It shouldn't be hidden or dramatized in the wrong way. It should be told honestly. To understand how the White House began, we need to understand the new country that decided to build it. This tale includes tough political choices, arguments about money, a design contest, an Irish architect with big ideas, determined craftsmen, backbreaking labor, a terrible fire, and a careful rebuilding that made the house look like the one we know today. Choosing a home for a young nation. In 1788, the United States approved the Constitution. The new government needed a permanent home, but it didn't have one yet. Congress had been moving around, meeting in cities like Philadelphia, New York, Princeton, and Annapolis. Where should the new capital go? That question turned into a major political problem. Here's what happened. Alexander Hamilton wanted Southern votes to support his financial plan. His plan said the federal government should take over the remaining war debts from the states after the Revolutionary War. Meanwhile, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison wanted the nation's capital to be in the South, not in northern cities like Philadelphia or New York. They struck a deal in 1790. This deal is often called the Compromise of 1790. In simple terms, Alexander Hamilton got support for his financial plan, and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison got a southern capital along the Potomac River. President George Washington would pick the exact location within a larger area that Maryland and Virginia would give to the federal government. George Washington chose a spot that included parts of Georgetown and Alexandria. People already lived and traded there, but by many measures the area wasn't ideal. Much of the land was swampy, the ground was not level, summers were hot and sticky. The river could flood. Still, the location had important political benefits. It sat between the North and South, acting like a bridge between regions that didn't always agree. Also, it was close to George Washington's home at Mount Vernon. He knew the land and believed it could be improved. Congress passed the Residence Act of 1790, which allowed the creation of a federal district up to 10 miles on each side. George Washington set the boundaries and made sure Georgetown, an active port town, was included. Then a French-born engineer named Pierre-Charles L'Enfant was hired to plan the new capital city. Pierre L'Enfant had fought for America during the Revolution and knew a lot about European city planning. His design for the capital was bold. It used wide avenues that crossed each other, grand public squares, and long views that ended at important buildings. He borrowed ideas from Paris and other European cities, but he tried to shape them for American life and for a republic, not a monarchy. In L'Enfant's plan, there would be 2 main buildings, a house for the president and a Capitol building where Congress would meet. The president's house would sit on higher ground and look toward the Potomac River. This spot would help the house drain better after rain and would give it a strong view. The president's home would be impressive, but not like a royal palace. It needed to show strength without acting like a throne. The exact location for the president's house was reportedly chosen by George Washington himself. The site was higher than the land around it, which helped with drainage and gave nice views. It also connected by Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol. That road would become the main ceremonial street in the city. Still, the land needed a lot of work. Workers would have to cut trees, move dirt, fix drainage, and build roads and bridges. Almost nothing was ready. It was easier to build in an existing city with streets and supplies already there. But the nation wanted a fresh start. A capital that was not run by older business or social groups. Building a capital from nothing sounded ideal and fair, but it meant building nearly everything from scratch. There was also a deadline. The government planned to move into the new capital in the year 1800. That gave around 10 years to plan, design, and build the most important buildings, including the President's House. 10 years sounds like a lot, but for projects this big, especially with poor roads, few machines, and slow transport, it was a very tight timeline. George Washington stayed committed to the site, even with all its problems. He worked with the commissioners in charge of the federal district and kept pushing the project forward. The next step was to decide what the President's House would look like, a design contest for the President's House. In 1792, the commissioners announced a design competition for the President's House. The rules were printed in newspapers. Architects could send in drawings, and the winner would receive $500 or a medal worth the same amount. That was a lot of money at the time. The instructions gave some clear points. The building needed rooms for private family life, and also spaces for official business. It had to be sturdy, using brick or stone, so it would last and resist fire. It needed to be worthy of the nation, but not so fancy that it felt like a king's palace. Many plans were sent in, but we don't know the exact number because several were lost or never clearly identified. The submissions ranged from simple to extremely grand. Some designs were small and plain. Others looked like European palaces, which felt wrong for a young republic that had just fought a war to escape monarchy. Thomas Jefferson, who loved architecture, entered a design without signing his name. His plan looked to ancient Rome for ideas, and especially took inspiration from Andrea Palladio's famous Italian buildings. His drawing included a central dome and gentle classical details. Jefferson's idea aimed for simple beauty, not over-the-top luxury. Even so, his plan was not chosen. We don't know the exact reason, but it might have seemed too modest or too close to European models in a way that didn't match the project's needs. The winning design came from James Hoban, an Irish-born architect who was working in Charleston, South Carolina. James Hoban's plan seemed to strike the right balance. It felt strong and dignified, but not like a palace. It used classical ideas, but shaped them for American life. It could serve as a home and a place for government events at the same time. James Hoban's design used a rectangular base with a center block and two wings that stuck out slightly. The style is often called Georgian, which means it followed calm classical rules, symmetry, even spacing, and clean lines. The front would have neatly placed windows and a central doorway with simple classical features. The idea was to show dignity through balance and good proportions, not through heavy decoration. George Washington and the commissioners were part of the decision. Washington cared a lot about how the city looked and how the President's House would represent the nation. His support for Hoban's plan helped it win. Choosing James Hoban's design showed how the new country saw itself. The people in charge did not want a palace. They also didn't want a building so small that it seemed weak. The President's House needed to look permanent and stable, but also modest enough to fit a free republic. Hoban's plan gave them that middle ground. The Irish architect behind the vision. Who was James Hoban? He was born in Ireland around 1758 and learned building and design in Dublin. Ireland had many new classical buildings at that time, and Hoban grew up seeing them and learning how to make them. After the American Revolution, he moved to the United States. He lived in Philadelphia for a while, and then moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where he designed homes for wealthy clients. These projects showed he understood the Georgian style very well. When Hoban heard about the design contest for the President's House, he decided to try. He had the right training and real experience on big projects. His plan was strongly influenced by Leinster House in Dublin. Today it houses Ireland's Parliament. Leinster House has a similar shape and quiet classical face. Hoban didn't just copy it, he adjusted the ideas to make sense in America and for a Republican government. Hoban's plan had 3 main floors. The lowest level, partly underground, would hold kitchens, storage rooms, and work areas. The main floor above would contain the large public spaces for receiving guests and holding events. The top floor would have bedrooms and more private rooms for the president's family. This kept public life and private life separate, but in the same building. The front of the house was symmetrical, with a central doorway and evenly spaced windows. The outside wasn't covered in fancy carvings. Instead, it looked important because everything was in balance and scaled just right. Inside, Hoban planned a wide entrance hall that ran through the middle. Big rooms would open off this space. One of the largest, later called the East Room, was designed for large gatherings. A state dining room would handle official dinners. Other smaller rooms would serve as offices or meeting spaces. The plan was flexible enough that different presidents could adjust it to their needs over time. After Hoban won, he became the superintendent of the project. That meant he was in charge of the building process from the ground up. George Washington reportedly asked for the house to be larger than Hoban's original sketch. Hoban changed the design, making it bigger while keeping its balanced look. This made the project more impressive, but also more expensive and slower to build. The choices James Hoban made didn't just shape the White House. They influenced many later American government buildings that also use calm classical shapes, symmetry, and simple strength. You can see Hoban's sense of order in courthouses, state capitals, and city halls across the country. Breaking ground, ceremonies, stone, and mud. Work officially began on October 13th, 1792. A cornerstone was placed to mark the start. The date was chosen to connect the new building with the idea of discovery, since it lined up with the anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas. George Washington attended, along with the commissioners and local officials. The exact spot of that first stone is a mystery today. Later workers tried to find it during repairs and renovations, but never did. Before anyone could build up, they had to build down. The site needed major preparation. Workers leveled the ground, dug drainage channels to carry water away from the foundation, and cleared trees and brush. This took a lot of time and effort. The foundation was made from stone because the building would be heavy. If the foundation was weak, cracks and settling could ruin everything above. James Hoban watched this work closely. He knew mistakes at this stage would cause problems for years. The stone for the outside walls came from Aquia Creek in Virginia, about 40 miles away. That stone was softer than granite, which made it easier to cut and shape. It had a light tan color. To move these heavy blocks, workers used boats and barges on waterways as much as possible because roads were rough and slow. After the stones reached the river, wharves near the site, the blocks were hauled by wagons the rest of the way. The stone arrived at the site as rough blocks. Skilled stone cutters shaped them to fit exactly where they were needed. Making these blocks took patience and careful work with hammers and chisels. Mistakes could waste an entire block. The workforce was mixed. There were skilled free craftsmen, stonemasons, stonecutters, carpenters, plasterers, many of them immigrants, especially from Britain and Ireland. There were also unskilled laborers who did the hardest physical tasks: digging, hauling, mixing, and lifting. Some of those laborers were free and paid. Others were enslaved people hired out by their owners, to the government or to the contractors. The government's records show payments to slave owners for the labor of enslaved workers. The money went to the owners, not the people doing the work. Progress was slow, and the job was dangerous. Workers stood on wooden scaffolds that could wobble. They hoisted heavy stones using ropes and simple cranes. If a stone slipped, it could break the work below or crush someone. Weather also caused delays. Rain stopped mortar work. Freezing temperatures ruined fresh plaster. Summers were boiling hot and full of insects. Even with all this, the walls slowly climbed higher. By the end of 1793, the foundation was mostly done and the first walls started to rise. In 1794 and 1795, the outside shape became easier to see. But the job was still far from finished. Who built the house? Free craftsmen and enslaved workers. To truly understand the White House, we have to talk about who built it. The records tell us a lot about free workers who were paid by the day or by the job. We know less about the enslaved workers because documents often recorded them only as numbers or first names. Skilled work formed the backbone of the build. Stonecutters shaped the Aquia Creek sandstone. Masons laid the stone and made sure the lines were straight and strong. Carpenters built the inner structure, floors, staircases, and the wooden frame for the roof. Plasterers made the walls smooth and added fine moldings. Every skill took long training. Many of the skilled workers were immigrants. They brought methods they learned in Europe and adapted them to this job. Payroll records show they earned much more money than unskilled laborers. A few enslaved people were also trained in crafts like carpentry, masonry, or blacksmithing. They did the same work as free craftsmen, but their wages went to their owners. Unskilled laborers did the heavy lifting, literally. They dug trenches, carried stone, mixed mortar, and cleaned up debris. Many of these laborers were enslaved people who had been rented out by their owners. The federal government worked within the labor system that existed in Maryland and Virginia at the time, and that system included slavery. The result is uncomfortable and true. A symbol of freedom and democracy was built in part by people who had no freedom at all. On the job site, free and enslaved workers often stood side by side, doing different tasks that had to fit together. A free mason might direct work that enslaved laborers would carry out. An enslaved carpenter who was highly skilled might work with very little supervision because he knew exactly what to do. The daily mix of skill, status, and control made the worksite complicated. This history is not simple, and it should not be ignored. The White House is a powerful symbol of American ideals. It is also a reminder that those ideals were not fully lived out when the nation began. Both facts are part of the story. Raising the walls, stone, sweat, and slow progress. Between 1793 and 1797, the outside walls of the president's house rose little by little. The process was a chain of tasks, each depending on the others. At the quarry, workers cut stone from the earth. They studied how the rock naturally split and placed iron wedges in the right places to split blocks cleanly. Cutting stone was skilled, tiring, and risky work. The blocks came out rough, so the quarry crew often trimmed them a bit to make transport easier. Moving the stone was another challenge. Barges floated the blocks along the waterways to the Potomac River. From the docks, wagons pulled by horses or oxen carried the blocks over land to the site. The roads were dirt and got muddy after rain. It was slow going, and every trip required care. At the site, stonecutters turned rough blocks into exact shapes that fit the plan. They had to produce smooth faces for the outside and tight joints so water wouldn't get in. Inside, the less visible stones could be rougher, but they still had to be strong and properly sized. Lifting the stones into place took teams of people. Lower wall sections could be set using ramps and simple lifts. As the walls climbed, scaffolds went higher. Workers used ropes, pulleys, and wooden cranes to raise each block, then nudged it into perfect position. Masons spread mortar, a mix of lime, sand, and water, so the blocks would bond together. They checked everything with levels and plumb lines to keep the walls straight. Work usually moved section by section. Crews would finish a part of the wall to a certain height, then shift to another part. This made it easier to reuse scaffolding and tools, and also helped the whole structure settle more evenly. While the outer walls were stone, many interior walls were brick. Bricklayers worked alongside the stonemasons, building the inner structure that would divide rooms and support upper floors. Weather never stopped being a problem. Rain ruined mortar. Cold weather froze it before it could set. Summer heat wore workers down. Still, the job continued through all seasons, just slower or faster depending on the conditions. By 1796, visitors could see the intended size and shape of the building. By 1797, the exterior walls were basically up, but the work was not finished. The building still needed the roof, floors, stairs, plaster, woodwork, and all the details that make a house livable. There was also a constant need to repair the stone even during construction. Aquia sandstone was softer than many other stones. If it got weather-beaten while workers were still building, some blocks needed to be fixed or replaced. That added extra time and cost. Despite the risks, people kept working. Accidents happened. Records from that time don't list every injury, but with heavy stones, high scaffolds, and simple tools, danger was part of the job. Enslaved craftsmen. Skill under constraint. Among the enslaved people on the site were men trained in skilled trades. Enslaved carpenters helped frame walls and floors, built staircases, and raised the roof structure. Enslaved masons laid stone or brick, following the same methods as free masons. Enslaved blacksmiths fixed tools and made iron parts. They worked to the same standards, but their pay went to someone else, and they had no choice about their labor. Documents from that era often list payments to slave owners for Negro hire, naming the owners and the number of people rented out. Sometimes first names of the enslaved workers appear, but often they don't. Historians have tried to match names across different papers to identify individuals, but many remain unknown in the records. Skilled enslaved workers sometimes had slightly better day-to-day conditions than unskilled laborers because their training made them more valuable to the owners. Even then, their freedom was limited. A talented enslaved carpenter might be trusted to do his job with less oversight, but he could not walk away, set his own wage, or choose another employer. Free craftsmen and enslaved craftsmen had to coordinate closely because their jobs connected step by step. Stone under wood, wood under plaster, and so on. Some free craftsmen even brought enslaved workers they owned to the site to help them. This mix of roles shows how tangled the system was. These skilled enslaved laborers were crucial to finishing the president's house. Their work made the job faster and cheaper than it would have been otherwise. Without them, the building might not have been completed on time, or at all. Today, the White House Historical Association and other groups work to recover and share the names and stories of these workers whenever possible. That research is still ongoing, and every new discovery helps give credit where it was long overdue. Inside the plan, rooms, uses, and everyday function, James Hoban's layout gave the building a clear structure. There were 3 main floors, each with a different purpose. Ground floor, partly below ground. This level held kitchens, storage, and workrooms. Servants could move around down here without crossing the big public rooms upstairs. Food could be prepared and carried up. Supplies could be stored nearby. Smoke and heat from cooking stayed mostly out of the main floor. Main floor, the grand public level. You reach this level by outside steps and an inside grand staircase. This floor held the important public spaces. The East Room, the biggest room in the house, was meant for receptions and large gatherings. Nearby, a series of smaller rooms, later called the Green Room, Blue Room, and Red Room, allowed flexible use, smaller meetings, waiting areas, or quiet conversations. At the other end of the floor, the State Dining Room allowed the president to host official dinners. Between these spaces, other rooms served as offices and meeting rooms. Second floor, family space. This level was mainly for the president's family. Bedrooms, sitting rooms, and personal spaces let the family live away from the constant movement of the main floor. This separation mattered for privacy and for the business of running a household, while also running a country. There was also an attic level with smaller rooms and storage. Over time, these spaces were used for staff or guests when needed. The interior design followed Georgian ideas: symmetry, regular window spacing, and careful proportions. The center hall was wide and tall, so it felt important, not just like a hallway. Fine details, like classical columns, carved fireplace mantels, and clean moldings, added grace without making the rooms too busy. Most of the structure inside was wood. That was normal for the time, even though we now know it made the building vulnerable to fire later. Interior walls between major rooms were thick for strength and to block noise. Fireplaces were the main heating system, so chimneys and flues ran up through the house. Windows were arranged to bring in light and let air move through the rooms. On the main floor, windows were taller to add elegance. Even after the building became livable, finishing the inside took years. Plastering, painting, and fine woodwork required dry weather and steady work. That slow pace would shape the first president's experience inside the house. The first president to move in, John Adams, in an unfinished home. In November 1800, John Adams became the first president to live in the new house. It looked grand from the outside. The walls were up. The roof was on. Windows and doors were installed. But on the inside, much was still incomplete. Abigail Adams, the First Lady, wrote letters about the cold, the drafts, and the bare rooms. The largest room, the East Room, wasn't finished at all. There was no plaster on the walls. Abigail Adams famously hung laundry in that huge space to dry because it was a large, empty area with decent airflow. The main staircase worked, but it wasn't fully completed with railings and finishing touches. Some bedrooms could be used, but others were just shells. The house was hard to heat, especially in damp Washington winters. Many fireplaces weren't ready, and the few that worked had trouble keeping the huge rooms warm. Furniture was a problem too. The government didn't have a big budget to furnish all those rooms. Some furniture was moved from Philadelphia, but there wasn't nearly enough to fill the house. Many rooms stayed empty. Outside, the grounds looked like a work site. Piles of materials sat around. The roads were muddy or dusty, depending on the weather. The planned landscape was still mostly an idea on paper. Even with all these issues, John Adams tried to use the house for its official purpose. He met guests and held some events, but it was hard to do large formal gatherings in unfinished rooms. His time in the house was short. John Adams lost the election of 1800 to Thomas Jefferson and left in March 1801. He and Abigail Adams had lived in the building for only a few months. Their time showed the difference between a building that looks done and a building that actually works. The White House needed more finishing before it could truly function as both a home and a place of government. Thomas Jefferson adds, "Ideas and finishes the basics." When Thomas Jefferson moved in as the third president in 1801, he found a house still in progress. He loved architecture and had entered the original design contest, so he paid close attention to the building. One of Jefferson's most important changes was adding the east and west terraces, long covered walkways that stretched from the main house. James Hoban's original ideas had left room for connections like these, and Jefferson made them real. The terraces gave weather-protected paths and created space for storage and service rooms. They also made the building look wider and more connected to the surrounding land, which fit Jefferson's classical taste. Inside, Jefferson pushed to finish rooms that had been sitting incomplete. The East Room finally got plaster and paint, though it stayed pretty plain for a while. Step by step, more rooms became usable for daily life and for official events. Jefferson also cared about the grounds. He began to shape the land around the house with trees and paths, though the full landscaping would come later under other presidents. He adapted rooms for his interests too, collecting scientific tools, maps, and natural specimens. The house became more comfortable, in part because the chimneys and fireplaces were finished and made to work better. Heating improved, and the building felt more livable. Politically, Jefferson liked simpler manners and less formality. He tried to use the grand spaces in a way that fit his beliefs about democracy. He hosted in a friendlier style than later presidents who leaned into ceremony. Meanwhile, the city around the house slowly grew. Pennsylvania Avenue became a real street. More buildings filled in. The president's house felt less lonely as the Capitol took shape. By the time Jefferson left in 1809, the White House was far more complete than when John Adams moved in. But the building was still a living project. Each president would change and add to it. The house was never finished in a final sense. It would keep evolving with the needs of the office and the nation. War and Flames, 1814, and the night the house burned. On August 24, 1814, during the War of 1812, British troops entered Washington. The American forces had been beaten at the Battle of Bladensburg earlier that day. President James Madison and his officials escaped the city. First Lady Dolly Madison stayed longer, rushing to save important items from the president's house. Dolly Madison helped protect vital papers and ordered that the famous full-length portrait of George Washington, painted by Gilbert Stuart, be taken down and carried away. The frame was too big to move quickly, so the canvas was removed from it. Her actions weren't just about saving fancy art. They were about saving symbols of the nation's identity. When the British soldiers entered the building, stories say they found a meal set on the dining table, food and wine ready. Some accounts say the officers ate before they set the house on fire. Whether that detail is fully accurate or not, it adds to the sense of violation. The British started fires in many rooms. The wooden floors, roof, and interior framing burned fast and hot. The flames were strong enough to crack stone in places. Furniture, decorations, and much of the inside of the house were destroyed. The sandstone exterior walls did not burn, and most of them remained standing, blackened but still there. That fact would matter a lot later. The terraces that Thomas Jefferson had added were damaged or burned, where they included wooden parts. The British tried to make sure the destruction was complete. They burned other government buildings too, including both chambers of the Capitol, the Treasury, and the War Department. The glow of the fires could be seen from far away that night. The next day, a fierce storm rolled in. Heavy rain helped put out the fires and may have even included a tornado. The weather also pushed the British to begin leaving, worried about being trapped or attacked. When James Madison and other officials returned, they found a damaged city. The president's house was a charred shell. The Capitol lay in ruins. Washington looked beaten, and the nation had to decide what to do. Should the government move the capital to another city, Or should they rebuild here? They decided to stay. That choice mattered. It said the United States would not be scared away by one attack. The question then became, who would rebuild the president's house, and how? Rebuilding James Hoban. Returns in the house, rises again. In 1815, rebuilding began. James Hoban, the original architect, returned to lead the work. He knew the building better than anyone and could guide the repair and reconstruction. First, the damage had to be studied. The foundation was fine. The stone walls still stood, though they were stained and some stones were cracked. Inside, almost everything wood was gone. Floors, beams, stairs, burned to ashes. That meant the interior had to be completely rebuilt. In a way, this was a chance to make certain improvements and fix earlier problems. Still, Hoban mostly followed his original design because the surviving walls required it and because the design still worked. Congress gave money for the job, but in steps. Some for stabilizing what remained, then more for full rebuilding. Workers came back, some of them the same men who had built the original house, others newly hired. The same trades were needed again. Stonecutters, masons, carpenters, plasterers, and laborers. New stone to replace damaged blocks came again from Aquia Creek. The cutters had to match color and texture, so the repaired parts would blend with the old walls. Inside, carpenters rebuilt the wooden skeleton, beams, joists, and roof, floor by floor. Plasterers recreated the fine interiors, including the ceilings and moldings in the grand rooms. Most changes were small, the kind you make when you rebuild something you've learned to use. A better way to run a chimney, a fix for a draft, an improvement in a doorway. The goal was to bring the building back to life with the same overall design. It took about 3 years. By late 1817, President James Monroe and his family moved into the rebuilt house. Finishing touches continued into 1818, but the building was again a working home and a seat of power. Rebuilding the house so quickly was a point of pride. The surviving stone walls made it faster and cheaper than starting from scratch. The White House people saw in 1817 looked much like Hoban's original vision, because it was rebuilt inside the same frame. The nation had answered the fire with determination. Why it's white, paint, symbol, and a name that stuck. Originally, the stone of the president's house had a warm tan color. After the 1814 fire, the exterior walls were smoke-stained and dirty. Painting or whitewashing stone buildings was common at that time. It protected the stone, made the surface look even, and covered damage or discoloration. During the reconstruction, the decision was made to paint the house white. White paint was available, affordable, and practical. It covered the smoke stains and gave the building a fresh, clean look. The paint people used back then had lead in it, which made it durable. They did not know the health risks that we understand today. Once the house was painted, it needed repainting every so often because weather wears paint away. That became regular maintenance. Over time, people started calling the building the White House because, well, it was a big White House where the president lived. The nickname spread in newspapers and in everyday talk. Official documents use formal names like President's House or Executive Mansion for many decades. Then, in 1901, President Theodore Roosevelt made the White House the official name, using it in stationery and communications. By then, the nickname had been popular for a long time, so the White House got its color for practical reasons after a disaster, and the name grew naturally from how it looked. What started as a helpful paint job became one of the most famous names in the world. Growing, modernizing, and holding on to the vision. 1800s overview. After it was rebuilt, the White House kept changing to fit the times. In the 1820s, the North Portico, the columned entrance facing Pennsylvania Avenue, was finished in 1829 under Andrew Jackson. The South Portico, the semicircular one facing the grounds, was added in 1824 under James Monroe. Both were part of Hoban's early ideas and made the building look even more classical and complete. They also added useful covered space for comings and goings. Inside, presidents and first ladies redecorated as styles changed. Rooms were used in new ways to match each administration's needs. Technology marched forward too. Gas lighting arrived in the 1840s, replacing candles and oil lamps. Then, in the 1890s under Benjamin Harrison, electricity began to be installed. At first, people were nervous about flipping switches because they were afraid of being shocked. Over time, the whole building switched from gas to electric light. Heating improved as well. Fireplaces were joined by central heating systems, making winters much less miserable. Plumbing got better, and water closets, early toilets were added. These changes made the house more modern and easier to live in. Outside, the grounds turned into designed gardens and lawns, not just leftover space around a building. First ladies often took a special interest in planting and planning the landscape. Security also changed. In the early years, the White House was more open to visitors. As threats grew, and after several presidents were attacked or killed, guards, fences, and rules were added to protect the building and its occupants. Finally, the work of the presidency expanded, and more office space was needed. The White House had to function not just as a home, but as a serious workplace. Interior rooms were adapted for staff and meetings. This growing pressure for offices would later lead to bigger changes in the 20th century. By 1900, the White House showed its age from heavy use. Systems grew old, rooms needed repair. A new round of major changes was coming in the next century, but the house still looked like the one James Hoban had imagined, just updated with the inventions of the time, remembering everyone who built it. For a long time, most people only heard about presidents and famous architects when they learned about the White House. The stories of laborers, especially enslaved laborers, were hardly mentioned. In the late 1900s and onward, historians began to study old records more carefully. They looked at payroll lists, contracts, and letters to find out who actually did the work. Groups like the White House Historical Association have tried to recover the names of enslaved workers when possible. Many records list only numbers or first names, which makes it hard. Still, some names have been found and their stories are being pieced together. In 2017, a historical marker was placed to honor enslaved workers who helped build the White House. Tours and official materials now include this part of the story more directly. This kind of research faces a simple truth. The United States was founded on ideals of freedom and equality, but the early nation also used slavery to build its capital and its buildings. The White House shows both sides of that history. It stands for democracy, and it was built partly by people who had no say and no freedom. Understanding the whole story means holding both facts at the same time. The house that never stops changing. After its rebuilding in 1817, the White House looked finished on the outside, but on the inside, it was always being updated. As the decades passed, new presidents brought their own ideas about comfort, technology, and style. In the 1820s and 1830s, James Monroe and Andrew Jackson added the porticos, the grand porches supported by tall white columns. The south portico curved outward, opening toward the gardens. The north portico faced Pennsylvania Avenue and gave the public entrance a dignified face. Together, they balanced the building's design and completed James Hoban's original vision. Inside, decoration changed again and again. Every new First Lady added her touch. Some preferred colorful draperies and patterned carpets, while others liked a cleaner look. By the mid-1800s, the house had gas lighting, patterned wallpapers, and heavier Victorian furniture. It was still the people's house, but it was beginning to look more like a proper palace of government. Technological advances kept arriving. Gas lamps replaced candles in the 1840s, and indoor plumbing gradually appeared in the 1850s. The bathrooms were simple by modern standards, but they made life much easier than hauling water upstairs in buckets. Heating also improved. Fireplaces warmed individual rooms, but the building was large and drafty. In the 1850s, metal pipes and furnaces began to spread warm air through ducts, an early form of central heating. This made Washington winters a little more bearable for its residents. The White House. During crisis, the Civil War years. When Abraham Lincoln became president in 1861, America was tearing itself apart. The Civil War turned the White House into more than a home. It became a command center for the preservation of the Union. Lincoln worked late into the night in his second-floor office, reading letters from generals and signing orders. The rooms often smelled of lamp oil and tobacco, and stacks of documents filled the desks. Soldiers guarded the gates outside. Cannon fire could sometimes be heard from across the Potomac. First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln tried to make the house more elegant, ordering fine new furnishings. Some criticized her spending, while soldiers fought and died. But she wanted the home to reflect the dignity of the presidency, even in dark times. When Lincoln was assassinated in 1865, the White House became a place of mourning. Crowds gathered outside the gates, silently holding candles. The House had witnessed both the struggle to save the Union and the grief that followed. A Gilded Age makeover. After the war, the United States entered a period of industrial growth and wealth called the Gilded Age. New presidents such as Ulysses S. Grant and Chester A. Arthur wanted the White House to look grand enough for a rising power. President Arthur ordered a major redecoration in the early 1880s. He even brought in the famous designer Louis Comfort Tiffany, who installed stained glass screens, colorful wallpapers, and heavy velvet drapes. Visitors saw a glittering, ornate interior filled with chandeliers and gold trim, a clear contrast to the simple Georgian elegance James Hoban had imagined. At the same time, the executive branch kept growing. The president's secretaries and clerks needed offices, but the House had limited space. Desks were squeezed into bedrooms and hallways. The need for expansion became obvious. Electricity arrives, and a few scares. By the 1890s, the nation had entered the age of electricity. President Benjamin Harrison decided to modernize the White House with electric lights. Wires were strung through the walls, and glowing bulbs replaced many gas lamps. The change excited and frightened people. The Harrisons were so nervous about electric shocks that they sometimes refused to touch the light switches, asking servants to do it instead. Still, electricity made evenings brighter and safer, and soon it was impossible to imagine the White House without it. A new century, a new name, Theodore Roosevelt's renovation. When Theodore Roosevelt became president in 1901, the White House was crowded, outdated, and nearly falling apart inside. His 6 energetic children filled the halls with noise, and the offices overflowed with paperwork. It was time for a transformation. Roosevelt hired the architectural firm McKim, Mead, and White, led by Charles McKim, to redesign the interior and reorganize the space. They strengthened the structure, cleared out the cluttered Victorian decor, and restored the clean classical lines that Hoban had originally planned. They also built a separate office wing on the west side of the house, the start of what we now call the West Wing. The West Wing gave the president a proper workspace apart from the family quarters. It also made the main building quieter and more livable. During this renovation, Roosevelt officially adopted the term White House for stationery and signs, making the nickname permanent. When the renovation finished in 1902, the building looked brighter, cleaner, and more organized. Visitors praised the balance between old-world dignity and modern efficiency. The White House through 2 world wars, World War I and Woodrow Wilson. During World War I, President Woodrow Wilson used the White House to coordinate America's entry into the global conflict. He turned rooms into war offices and held intense meetings with military and diplomatic leaders. The House buzzed with telegraph messages and the new sound of typewriters. When the war ended, Wilson addressed cheering crowds from the balcony above the North Portico, symbolizing peace and leadership. The Roaring Twenties and the Depression. The 1920s brought prosperity and change. Calvin Coolidge installed new mechanical systems, including better heating and ventilation. The first radio broadcast from the White House reached millions of Americans. Then came the Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt took office in 1933 amid economic collapse. Wheelchair-bound due to polio, FDR moved about the House with ramps and aids. He held his famous fireside chats from the White House, using radio to speak directly to the public and restore hope. World War II and leadership, under fire. When World War II erupted, FDR turned parts of the White House basement into a secret command center. Maps, telephones, and communication lines connected him with generals around the world. Visitors said the White House at night glowed dimly under blackout curtains as the president planned strategies that would shape the world's future. After his death in 1945, Harry Truman took over leadership in the same rooms, but soon discovered the building itself was in danger. The Truman Reconstruction, saving a falling house. By the late 1940s, engineers realized that the White House was literally falling apart. Floors sagged, walls cracked, and heavy chandeliers shook when people walked upstairs. Decades of changes and age had weakened the wooden frame inside. President Harry Truman had no choice but to order a complete reconstruction. In 1948, the family moved across the street to Blair House while the entire interior was taken down. Only the outer stone walls were left standing, just like after the 1814 fire. Inside those walls, builders created a new steel frame to support modern floors, staircases, and mechanical systems. Workers salvaged original paneling and fireplaces where possible, reinstalling them once the structure was safe. The project lasted 4 years and cost millions of dollars, but it saved the nation's most famous home from collapse. When Truman moved back in 1952, he joked that he felt like he was living in a new house built inside an old shell. The reconstruction gave the White House the strength to survive for centuries to come. The Kennedy Restoration, a touch of elegance. In 1961, John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy brought youth, glamour, and a deep love of history to the White House. Jacqueline Kennedy believed the home of America's presidents should also be a museum of the nation's culture. She began a full restoration, filling rooms with authentic antiques and art from past centuries. She worked with experts to find pieces that matched each room's historical style. Television viewers across the country watched her famous 1962 tour of the White House, where she explained how each room reflected a period in American history. Her efforts transformed public appreciation of the building. Instead of seeing it as just an office or a residence, people began to view it as a living piece of American heritage. Modern presidents, modern needs. In the decades after the Kennedys, each administration added its own layer of history. Lyndon B. Johnson improved press facilities and expanded the West Wing offices. Richard Nixon added a private bowling alley. Jimmy Carter installed solar panels on the roof, reflecting growing environmental concerns. Ronald Reagan hosted glittering state dinners that recalled Hollywood glamour. Bill Clinton and George W. Bush introduced more advanced communications and security systems. Barack Obama upgraded digital technology and made the White House more energy efficient. Donald Trump and Joe Biden continued restoration and maintenance projects to preserve the historic rooms while updating the living quarters. Through all these changes, the building has remained both home and workplace, a combination few structures in the world can match. The symbolism of the White House. The White House is more than a building. It represents the presidency, the nation, and in many ways, democracy itself. When people see its shining white columns, they think of power transferred peacefully, of leadership chosen by citizens. Foreign leaders visit its rooms, children tour its halls, journalists broadcast from its lawn, protesters march outside its gates. Every day, the White House connects citizens to their government. Yet the building's history holds contradictions. It stands for liberty and equality, but enslaved people helped build it. It is a place of peace negotiations, but also of wartime decisions. It is grand, but meant to serve the people. Those contrasts make it real and human. Remembering the hidden hands of history. Only in recent decades has the nation begun to honor all who built the White House. Historians have identified some of the enslaved workers by name. Men like Philip Reed, Peter, Ben, and Harry, whose skill and strength shaped its stones and timbers. Markers now stand on the grounds to recognize their labor. Educational. Programs and exhibits tell visitors that the story of the White House is also the story of America's struggle to live up to its ideals. Every time the walls are repainted or the floors are restored, craftsmen, descendants of free and enslaved builders alike, continue the work begun more than 2 centuries ago. The White House today. Past meets present. Today, the White House serves several roles at once. A working office, it houses the Oval Office, the Situation Room, and meeting spaces where major policies and crises are handled daily. A historic home. The first family lives on the upper floors, surrounded by history. A museum. Public tours display art, furniture, and decorations that tell the nation's story. A symbol. Television cameras, photographs, and news reports beam its image around the world as a sign of American democracy. Security, technology, and maintenance have grown more complex, but the structure remains recognizable as the one James Hoban envisioned more than 230 years ago. Its sandstone walls, first laid by hand in the 1790s, still stand behind every coat of white paint. Enduring legacy. The White House has burned, been rebuilt, nearly collapsed, and been reborn. It has hosted weddings and funerals, war councils and peace treaties, joyful celebrations, and moments of deep sorrow. Every president from John Adams to Joe Biden has left some mark on its history. It stands not just for power, but for persistence. The same stone that enslaved Masons cut and lifted still holds the weight of a living democracy. When visitors walk through its halls, they walk through layers of American time, each one reminding us that freedom, like architecture, must be built carefully, repaired when damaged, and maintained with care. Closing reflection. The White House began as an idea on paper, a dream of a home for leaders chosen by the people. It rose from a swamp with the hands of immigrants, laborers, and enslaved workers. It survived fire and war, modernization and division. It grew along with the nation it represents. Every column, every staircase, every repainting tells a story of America's evolution, from compromise and conflict to renewal and resilience. More than just a mansion, the White House is a living chronicle, a reminder that the ideals of democracy, though sometimes stained and tested, can be rebuilt again and again, just like the house itself.